he accepted the fact that I didn't have the experience, but he liked the fact that I had the technical aptitude to learn. He saw my GitHub portfolio, my CV, and all the kind of things that I'd learned in the cyber range. So he realized that, okay, this is somebody who's a self-starter, doesn't necessarily need somebody to hold their hand to learn something new because they're a go-getter and they'll get up to speed pretty quickly.
Hey everybody, Josh here. I'm the owner of the cyber range, and this is Sija. She's my friend, of course, and then the operations manager for the cyber range. And usually when people get jobs, usually they're in the States, and I like to interview them myself. But because I'm in Asia most of the time, and she lives in the US, Sija offered to do the interviews for me, and she's actually better at interviewing than me anyway. So yeah, enjoy the interview.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, my name is Sija. I help run the cyber range and support members. As our community has been growing, we've been hearing a lot of great news. And today we have Ruben Clarke here, who is a member in cyber range, and he recently landed a job as an ISO 27001 consultant. Welcome. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, he's agreed to come on to share his experience and all of that insight about his career journeys. So Ruben, will you mind give us an introduction of yourself and just a brief one?
Yeah, sure. As you've just been told, my name is Ruben Clarke. I'm 35 years old. I live in Manchester in the United Kingdom, born and raised in London, which is why I don't have a Mancunian accent. I've lived here for 5 years, but I refuse to adopt it. I'm going to stay true to my roots and keep my Southern accent. Career-wise, I joined a company called ADL Consulting 7 months ago now as an ISO 27001 consultant. That started off with the probation period, which is why I kind of kept a little bit hush about it. Now that the probation period is over, I'm kind of quite happy to share my journey with people, how I transitioned from where I was to where I am now.
Yeah, you also mentioned that this is 100% like a remote job as well.
That's correct, yeah. It's 100% remote. Because of the nature of the work that we do, can work from anywhere, which is fantastic. Occasionally we do visit client sites, but not that often. But we're flexible. Some of our clients are in Ireland, and some of them are just up and down the United Kingdom.
Okay, so you mentioned that the nature of the work that doesn't require you to be in the office. Will you mind share more about it? What do you feel the day-to-day work for this as a consultant? There's a lot of people really interested to know.
Yeah, of course. So the nature of the work, what we do is we either help with implementation of ISO 27001, or we actually provide internal audit services for ISO 27001. So implementation, that's basically having conversations with the client, figuring out what they do when it comes to information security, and then aligning what they do with best practices that meet the standards requirements. We don't try and reinvent the wheel. A lot of the time, the organizations we work with are doing the right thing, but things just need to be kind of, just optimized a little bit, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. When it comes to auditing, again, we audit against the standard. So the standard has clauses 1 through 10, but 4 through 10 is what's actually audited against. And it also has the Annex A controls. There's 93 Annex A controls. I'm not going to go into a whole lesson about ISO 27001 because if you want to learn about it, there's enough YouTube videos talking it through. But essentially, an organization would determine which of the Annex A controls would be applicable to their organization. And then when they're audited against it, we'd basically audit to see how they are meeting the requirements of those controls. So an example would be something like authentication. So you'd say, okay, you're going to be implemented in authentication controls. So an auditor would say, okay, how are you doing that? And the organization would show us something like a password policy, and then they'd show us the technical configuration of how that's actually applied. But that's just one of the 93 controls. We could go through all of them, but we'd be here all day.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it looks like you're talking about referring the standard will be like GRC, right? It's that's the it's like the whole roof about the umbrella about what and why, and then the why we are doing is how to implement the steps.
Exactly. Yeah, GRC is probably the best way to sum it up.
Okay, so I'm really curious, in terms of how you pivot from your bio, you say you are a British Army veterans, and then you pivot into cybersecurity, and we might, how you decided to pivot into the IT cybersecurity area.
Yeah, so I actually left the military in 2013, so quite some time ago. I'm a lot older than I may look, and after the military, I worked for British Telecoms as a fiber
Mhm.
optic engineer, so laying the cables for internet connectivity, both in domestic and commercial properties. From that, again, I moved into marketing. I spent around about 10 years in marketing. And what I started to notice about 3 years ago was I was being hit with a lot of rebuttals when trying to sell marketing services. People were saying, why would we pay you to do this when we can do it ourselves using tools like Canva and, you pick it tool. So I realized that this is an industry for me that was becoming a little bit too saturated. And a lot of the clients that we were working with were leaning on us for support around data protection, mainly GDPR, because all of our clients at the time were in the UK or they were dealing with customers in the UK. So
Yes.
I started to take on those roles naturally. And then from there, I decided that that's going to be the industry that I wanted to go into, more compliance, GRC, information security. So I set out on a mission. That mission took me 2 years. And what I was doing was I picked up a job as a bus driver. So I was
Yes.
driving in the mornings from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., so which is, I guess, your normal working hours, I was studying, doing
Okay.
labs in the cyber range, doing different courses, certificates, and then I'll drive again between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. So I had a 5 to 9 and a 5 to 9 outside of the
Wow.
9 to 5, which was spent studying. So
Yeah, that's really smart. Like you kind of prioritizing like the time, then you can have a big chunk of time to prioritizing like your career pivot.
yeah, so it allowed me to study as a full-time job whilst working a full-time job outside of that, basically, because I couldn't afford to compromise on an income because
Yes.
I'm not a student. So I needed to make sure that my income was covered before I committed myself to, extensive studying.
Okay. Yeah, that's really impressive. So another question is that how do you like eventually find out like cyber range or like Josh Medical's channel, and then you decided to join? And I was looking at your like your member history. It looks like you've been joining like long time ago.
That's
Yeah,
right.
when
Yeah.
when
So
we started, launch the product, like even before we polish it to become like the current product right now.
I stumbled across Josh's YouTube when I was kind of making that transition. I
Yeah.
think, his content was great. A lot of the way that he produced his content resonated with me. He's very direct about things as well. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He'll tell you, this, if you do this, you're going to be wasting your time. So yeah, I kind of resonated with that. And then I ended up purchasing one of his courses, which is through, I think it was Course Careers, and it was like
Yes.
getting into IT. So I started off
Hmm.
with that, and then I joined I think it's called the Cyber Community on school, and then
Yeah.
I was in there, kind of seeing what was going on, and then there was the build up to when Cyber Range was going to be launched, and I was like, okay, this is what I need. This gives me exposure to enterprise environments. Can't get my words out. So yeah, when he launched that, I was straight in there, went through all the kind of course modules, did a few of the threat hunts and stuff like that. And meanwhile, started to work on my GitHub portfolio, using
Hmm.
the information that we was learning there, as well as optimizing my CV and LinkedIn.
Yeah, I see. Like I was also curious, like you really just go into like consultant and GRC because this is like a really like a very popular,
Mhm.
positions worldwide. So like do you just specific looking for GRC position or consultant, or like you're looking around for like SOC analysis and all of that when you're doing a job hunt?
Yeah, so I was very specific about the type of role that I wanted. So I guess my personality is one that's of a curious nature. So I like to learn a lot. I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say I'm addicted to learning and solving problems and challenges. So when I saw what a day in the life of a consultant looked like, where you can interact with several businesses, I thought this
Mm-hmm.
makes sense to me. I can interact with different businesses, see how they do things differently, learn from
Yeah.
that. And if I'm consulting to another client, I can say, without disclosing who it was, I saw this done this way. Maybe this might help you. So it's kind of sharing that information between
Yeah.
clients without revealing who they are in order to improve what they're doing when it comes to, best practices. So I started on a bit of a path in order to kind of reverse engineer how to get to the ideal job. So within GRC, within the UK in particular, you have a accreditation body called UCAS.
Mm-hmm.
So what you find is that if an organization is UCAS accredited, then that organization can actually audit and certify a company against ISO 27001. Because a big problem with the industry at the moment is there are companies that can certify against ISO 27001 that aren't UCAS accredited. So what that
Okay.
basically means is that the certification is worthless. For me, it was clear that I didn't want to end up working for an organization that wasn't UCAS accredited. So I built a database of all the organizations in the UK that were UCAS accredited, then did a bit of open source research to find out point of contacts at those companies. Again, expanded that into a list, and then basically went on a bit of a journey just reaching out to people, asking for people at the company if they have. So this was basically reaching out to auditors to ask if they had worked with consultants, and
Yes.
if they have worked with consultants, who are the consultants? So the reason that I took this approach was because if I speak to, say, company A and they say they've worked with consultant B, when I reach out to consultant B, it's now a referral, right? I say, I spoke to this person at company A, they recommended you. So now when I speak to the consultant, they don't have their back up against the wall about who's this person reaching out to me out of the blue. It becomes a referral. So I found people were a lot more receptive to cold outreach that way. So I did that, had a lot of conversations lined up, and literally had a list of people. But I saw a LinkedIn post where my current manager, he was looking for somebody with a few years of experience in this particular role. And I thought, I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring. Messaged him. We had a conversation back and forth. You know, he accepted the fact that I didn't have the experience, but he liked the fact that I had the technical aptitude to learn. He saw my GitHub portfolio, my CV, and all the kind of things that I'd learned in the cyber range. So he realized that, okay, this is somebody who's a self-starter, doesn't necessarily need somebody to hold their hand to learn something new, because they're a go-getter and they'll get up to speed pretty quickly. So I actually didn't even end up having to go through my database of potential employers, because I found one on LinkedIn.
Wow, like this could even film like like movies, like because it was so smart. Like you actually like look, like you reverse engineer to look for what is like the the potential like the company, and then ask them what kind of consultant you're using, and then you refer them, because like you naturally just have this. It's like feel like organic networking. You're not trying like just a lot of like cold reach, like you just like DM them in the LinkedIn, but you get no
Yeah, you get nowhere.
reply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I also need to learn this. This is so cool. Thanks for sharing.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so since your job is remotely, like how do you do your like do you have like in person, or I was assuming maybe you're gonna have like like this kind of like interview, right? Like online interview or something like that. And how many round of interview? Or just because it was like, since your hiring manager, so like it was the process really fast.
Yeah, so it was a Zoom interview or Google Meets interview,
Yeah.
and we
Uh-huh.
had the conversation, and he did mention that he was speaking to a couple of other people as well,
Okay.
and the conversation went back and forth. Then we went over negotiations on email, and he basically managed his risk, because obviously he's taking a risk on me because I'm new to the industry and I don't
Yes.
have the qualifications that he was looking for. But I think he recognized the opportunity to find somebody that's passionate about this, that they don't need to be kind of prodded and encouraged in order to want the
Yeah.
best from the opportunity.
Mhm.
But fortunately for him, he actually stumbled across somebody else who had exactly the same appetite as me. So two of us were hired at
Oh,
the same time. So in terms of personal development and career progression, that's really helped, because we both kind of started together and assisted each other as we kind of progressed in our journey. When it comes to how that kind of transition started off, we started off on a 3-day probation period. So it was 3 days a week. And those other 2 days, I continued to kind of do a little bit of freelance marketing work, a bit of driving. After the first 3 months, those 3 days were expanded to 5 days, because he was happy with the kind of work that we were delivering. And also there was additional work being required by our clients. And yeah, it's just been a natural progression from there. So now I'm past the probation period, working 5 days a week. It's 100% remote. We communicate online. We have in-person meetings, like Christmas. We had a Christmas function.
yeah.
Occasionally, if we go to client sites, we'll meet up there. Sometimes it doesn't require all of us. Like if there's a client in Manchester, for instance, I'll take that. If there's a client that needs somebody to see them in the south of England, the others will take that.
That's so cool. So I would say like for whoever wanna be interesting consultant will be like you should like at least you're willing to switch your different clients because they might work in different industrial and you need to have the like willingness to learn the industrial and learn how the information security like compliant with this industrial. Like all of that will be something to at least like qualify as like any related GRC role, I would say.
So one of the things I'd suggest to people who are considering becoming a consultant is you don't need to be an expert. If you're going to become a consultant against the standard, what you need to do is understand the standard and then communicate with your client or who you're consulting with as how do they interpret the standard and actually say this is how we do this. Because the good thing about ISO 27001 and many other standards is the fact that there isn't one way that it needs to be done. There's a million and one ways that you can actually interpret a control and say that this is how we meet the requirement. So as long as you can decipher the requirements of the standards, then you can actually kind of be that bridge between your client and the standard and say, okay, I see that you're doing this. The standard asks for that. That's a match. Or you're doing this. The standard asks for this. Have you considered doing it this way? And then they can make the changes in order to meet the requirements of the standard. So, I mean, one of the big things that I had going into this was imposter syndrome. I don't come from a development background and I work with extremely smart people day to day. I'm definitely never the smartest person in the room. And they actually find that quite endearing if you're honest and you say, hey, look, I'm not a developer. What I do know is the ISO standard and the requirements. So forgive me if I have to dig a little bit deeper and ask you to explain something more than once. And all of them, they're happy with that. Everybody that we speak to, they're okay. They realize that we're not here as an audit to try and trip them up and find problems. As an internal audit, it's more of like a dress rehearsal before the actual external audit. So when you come in with an approach which is, hey, look, we're on the same side here, people are very transparent and forthcoming about any kind of concerns and things like that. So it's a good environment to be in. Well, I mean, my experiences so far have been great. I don't know if everybody else has had the same experience, but I think a lot of it is dependent on how you interact with people.
Okay, so it looks like whatever your current role, it requires a lot of like transparent or a lot of like clear communications, and like how do you like all those skills, like how do you like talk to people, so like you approach your clients, and how do you make sure like just how to talk to them to make sure like they understand the standards or like they don't feel like really defensive.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, so when it comes to communicating with clients, that's probably the most difficult thing because people are individual, right? Everybody has their own personality. So some clients that we speak to, they're very, very talkative. They like to talk because they're passionate, right? They want to talk about everything. So, and I'm happy, I'm all ears, but sometimes we may have a schedule that we need to kind of adhere to. So it becomes a little bit difficult to interrupt people. But again, it's finding that balance to communicate. We still need to make progress across the other things that we're checking here. We can't kind of stay on this particular area of the audit. And then you might interact with some people who a little bit more just kind of, if you don't ask the question, they're not going to tell you anything. So you need to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And if they answer the question that doesn't quite satisfy what you're looking for, you can then literally rephrase what the standard says. You can say, okay, the standard says ABC. Can you tell me in your own words how you're doing that? Then they can kind of explain what they do day to day to meet that particular control. You can kind of decipher that, and then you can basically document that against the standard if it meets the requirements. If it doesn't, then you can obviously point it out and say, hey, look, this doesn't quite meet what's expected. This is an area that we need to work on.
Okay. Wow, this is really cool way to approach people. And another question for you will be, when you are trying to apply for consultant, like do you get any like certification or degree along with trying to do a job hunt?
I don't have a degree. I don't have any formal education. I left high school with, in the UK we have GCSEs. I didn't leave with many, maybe 4 or 5, and then I joined the army at 17. So I didn't go to university or anything like that. But in terms of certifications, I did the Google Cybersecurity certificate. I did the ISO 31000 Risk Manager, and I did the ISO 27001 Lead Implementer. Those are the only certifications that I've done. I've been looking at doing Security Plus. The only reason that I'm looking to do that is, one, to expand my understanding of the different technologies across the industry, because like I said, as a consultant, you interact with different people, different products, and the more I know, the better, and it enables me to be a better consultant if I have a deeper understanding.
Yes.
Not only that, but when I look at some of the higher level certifications like CISSP, CISM, those sorts of things, there's usually a disclaimer which says if you have Security Plus, the time in which you can apply for these certificates is reduced by a year. So some of them, it's like, oh, you need to do 5 years in the industry, but if you've got Security Plus, you can do it in 4. So for me, it would be a case of doing that because I want to potentially pursue those certificates, and that would expedite that process.
Yeah, that's really cool. And also, you are also in the industry doing like practice. So your work also, your work experience also counts as like part of like, qualification for the like CISSP or like all these higher levels. I see. So that was really cool. I think you're just really smart about how to reach people in LinkedIn, like doing their, reverse engineer to reach them in a way that they feel you are part of the group before you even like, having the formal interview.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So when you mentioned about the GitHub, about the project, so is it, will you mind sharing what kind of project you've been doing? Or yeah.
Yeah, so the
GitHub?
main projects I did on GitHub was the Active Directory ones, using a script in order to create users. That was one of the main ones, using PowerShell. And then also doing some of the threat hunts. One of them was, it's been a little while since I've been on my GitHub, but I think it was Impossible Travel. So it's basically using the enterprise tools to kind of identify when somebody would log in from the same user account, but 2 different IP addresses in a short space of time. So for instance, users logged in London and then also in New York within 2 to 3 minutes. It's like, well, hang on a minute, that's an anomaly. And then that was one of the threat hunts that we did. And you kind of use KQL in order to query the logs to be able to identify that as a problem.
Okay, so is that referred to like the Azure and also the Tenable scanning?
That's right,
Okay. Okay, at your current work, they're using like Azure, Tenable, or different similar like enterprise like searching tools?
So we're not using Azure at the moment, but our clients do. So when I see them, talking through different, logged events and stuff in their Azure environments, I'm like, I'm familiar with this because I've seen it and I've had a little bit of hands-on experience. Tenable, again, that's something that we were using. We're not using it anymore. But again, some of our clients use it for their own kind of threat intelligence and things like that. So again, it's good because I've had this exposure to a lot of these tools before because of the cyber range. So when I'm seeing them now, it's not for the first time.
Yeah, cool. That's so cool. And this will be my last question. Will be, for example, if for someone that is not ready, to join the cyber range yet, is there any even free community? I mean, cyber community is free, but is there any like online like online labs on like YouTube besides Josh Medical, like channels that you recommend people to like search or learn as much as they can before they, investing, spend money on, enterprise, like all these tools?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment on that because I don't really know if there's many others like what Josh has provided. I think there is the cyber community. So it's, I guess, the free version of the cyber range. So like cyber community, and then there's the cyber range, which is obviously the paid community. So there's probably a lot of people in there who can kind of answer that question. Also, just connecting with people in the industry on LinkedIn, you can literally, like, your network is your net worth, right? So I've connected with several people from both the cyber range and also the cyber community on LinkedIn. And as a result of that, I've started to see some of these other communities which are spawning out. And I'm really interested in a few of them, to be honest, mainly around the automation of GRC. So you can start to run automations to basically do like access reviews to make sure that people that are leaving companies, their accesses are being revoked and things like that. So for me, it's like, this is stuff that when we look at my role as a consultant and we're speaking to our clients and we say, how do you manage onboarders, movers, and leavers of your company, right? This is something that a lot of them have a manual process for. So for me, I'm looking at the opportunity here, which is if I can figure out a way to automate this as a
Yeah.
service, then that becomes something that we can offer as a consultant to our clients. We can say, hey, look, you considered doing it this way because it may save you X amount of hours. So
Yes.
yeah, it's just,
And yeah. That's so, yes, I understand like you're talking about automation with like agentic AI stuff, like how
Mhm.
it just moved the standard of the industrial like in the bit like higher level, but also the barrier is low because like everybody can use AI, everybody can use all these Claude or ChatGPT or
Mm,
all of that. So I guess for learning purpose, like we have everybody able to learn, but also for like a job qualification that and in the future, I would say maybe this will be part of like you need to have this kind of skill in order to do your work, or at least have like a system of something to automate it that you can present to your client with more evidence, more fact data, more
mhm.
more stuff that can support your opinions, I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you lean on a good point there about like AI kind of lowering that barrier for entry. And this is where we see it like as the consultants, we're always talking to our clients about how they're using AI. And some of
Yeah.
them they're not using it, some of them they are using it, and some of them,
Mm,
they not too sure if or not maybe some of their staff are using it, but they don't have an AI policy in place. So it's a hot topic because I mean you only really have to look at the news at the kind of opportunities for certain things to be exploited. And AI is unfortunately another threat vector. So it's definitely something that is a hot topic for us in terms of security and how AI is being secured. Because at the
mhm.
moment, when we look at, I guess, governance, risk, and compliance, there's usually a chain of accountability. Who did it? Who did
Yes,
what? Et cetera, et cetera. If an
that's
AI is
true.
making an autonomous decision, then whose fault is that? Right.
Yeah.
So there's questions that need to be answered, and no one has an answer for it yet. So it's an interesting space to watch as more and more people are, releasing AI into the wild in their organizations without thinking of the consequences.
Yeah, like I have like a both feelings because like at least you have a gatekeeper as a human that you have somebody to blame, right?
Hmm.
If everything's like become automated, everything's like they are decided, okay, if actually things blow up or goes wrong, we don't know. We cannot blame a bot or
Yeah.
a AI, right? Or I guess it has to have somebody that understand the fundamental, understand the architecture, understand the standard that sign off this like
Hmm.
execution for this like a automated whatever AI thing, like all this. So, but it's definitely some skill that I'll require in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's another ISO standard called 42001, which is about AI. That's something that I'm looking to probably expand into myself again, just to get that kind of deeper understanding. Because when it comes to accountability, you need to know when it comes to AI that kind of rationale that went into why the AI has made the decision. Because at the moment, if you look at it like as a top level, and you look at the individual who made a prompt into the AI, they've done that with the best of intentions, right? So is that
Yes.
person to blame or is the model to blame? If you don't understand the model and the logic and the rationale behind why it made the
Mhm.
decisions that it made, then
Mhm.
you can't kind of decipher that point of failure. So again, for me, it's just like I have a slogan actually, which is turning curiosity into capability. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm curious about this, so I want to learn more, so that way,
Mhm.
again, I can become a better consultant because
Yeah.
it becomes another area of expertise for me.
I'm so happy for you about like all your journeys, and
Thank you.
yeah. And okay, one more last question is like, how do you like keep your momentum, with the current, people say, oh, AI is gonna replace your job with like, oh, there's not enough like opportunity in the market. Like, but
Mhm.
would you say as a person like you currently working in the consultant like security like information role, then will you give you some opinion or some like how you're thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm under no illusion that AI is going to displace a lot of people, but at the
Uh-huh.
same time, it will create a lot of opportunities. I think the main thing is not to worry about what will happen to everybody else. I think you can be the master of your own destiny. You write your own story, right? So the people that are
Mhm.
going to be displaced are the ones who sit on the sidelines and say, "I'm not doing it. I'm not using AI because it's never going to catch on." Right? And I mean, if you haven't looked around, it's already here. But if we look at rates of adoption, you only need to ask your parents. The parents aren't using it yet. They're not using it everywhere. Once you got your parents saying, "Oh, use ChatGPT," and parents, your grandparents, and stuff like that, that's when you've got a higher rate of adoption. So I think for everybody who's kind of worried about it, I think the best thing to do if you are kind of tech savvy and you're interested in this kind of industry is to start to work with it, because it's a force multiplier. If you're already doing something, it can help you, being able to ask the right questions, but also you got to consider hallucinations of AI, because sometimes it can give you information based on what it thinks is correct. But that can go into a whole new rabbit hole if you start looking into skills for AI. So you can actually train an AI to, I guess, master a particular skill. So if you're looking at like GRC, you can actually create a skill for your AI model that is specifically for GRC. So you can train it on ISO 27001. You can train it on SOC 2, NIST, everything. So that way, it's not just randomly grabbing bits from the internet. It's like, okay, I can reference what you've told me and decipher your question in order to give you a more accurate response. So again, it's like you can do all the work manually and go through the documents and read everything. But if you can train your AI model to be an assistant to kind of leverage in order to amplify your own work, then you have no issues. I think I say all of that to basically say, if you're not using it, start using it, because if you're not using it, then maybe you might have something to worry about, because the people that are using it, I don't think have an issue.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you. And also, like you said, if you're curious about it and you feel like, already in this industry, you should kind of turn the curiosity into the capacity, right? Like you said, like turn into a skill or turn into something that you can produce or contribute. So that is a good way to learn. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, like if you're using it, there's always people that don't want to learn. So if you can be that point of contact to actually help people use it, then you're always going to be needed, because there are people that will just say, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm too scared. I don't understand it. But if you can be that kind of that bridge between, somebody who doesn't want to do it, but somebody, they still want to use it, but they still want like a mediator, a person in between, you can be that person.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you so much for taking the
That's okay.
time for this call today. Thank you.
No
And I
problem.
hope, you have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you. And you too.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
So no pressure, obviously, but if you're serious about getting into cybersecurity, or you just want real non-sandbox hands-on experience with actual enterprise tools in a live shared network, you can get all of that in the Cyber Range. In the past year, we've done about 100 employment verifications. That is like real employers reaching out to us to confirm experience for people in the community that have actually landed jobs. When you onboard into the community, you'll get issued credentials for access to our company's actual network, which is a real live corporate environment with over 1,200 users and fully licensed enterprise security stack with platforms like Tenable Vulnerability Management, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and Microsoft Sentinel. And just like at a real security job, we'll provide training covering everything that you'll encounter, from enterprise vulnerability management to threat hunting to general security operations as well. And you'll get experience and training better than if you were hired as a corporate junior SOC analyst. Every week, we also have a cybersecurity threat hunt and capture the flag challenge where you can compete for cash prizes while building legit resume experience at the same time. And this isn't a simulation, it's like real infrastructure with real users, real attacks, and organic logs that you'll have hands-on access to. So if you're interested, check out the link in the description, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.